welcome back to Bleav in Vikings for today, Monday, April 28th. I'm your host, Mike Wabschall. It's time to dive into the Vikings 2025 draft haul. We will do that all week right here on Bleav in Vikings. Today, we will focus on the Vikings' first-round draft pick. It's Donovan Jackson, a guard from Ohio State. To help us dive into Jackson and learning more about him, we have a guest. He is Bryant Browning, co-host of Bleav in Buckeyes and a former Buckeye himself. Bryant was a 3-year starter for Ohio State, a 3-year academic All-Big Ten, and a co-captain for the Buckeyes. You can find him on X at BR_Browning. Make sure you find Bleav in Buckeyes as well. They are on YouTube and wherever you find all your other podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and all the things. Hey, Brian, how's it going, man?
Yeah, I can't complain, Mike. Doing all right. How you feeling, man? Excited about the draft?
Yeah, I am excited about the draft. You know, it's kind of one of those deals where, unlike the season where you have games and we know the winners and losers right away, you know, you don't really know how it's going to pan out. And so it's kind of a hope building moment for NFL teams, you know, and then something you are familiar with, you get the undrafted part of it where you're signing free agents and you get excited about some of those guys as well. And you can't wait to see those guys come in with a chip on their shoulder. You being an undrafted player who hooked on with the team, you can respect that. So this is a fun time of year. And I worked for the Vikings for 15 years and draft weekend was always one of my favorite times of the year, you know, and I know you talk a lot about it as well, being a former player, but also hosting a football podcast. The draft, I'm sure, is great content for you, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just like you say, it's just, you know, how often do you get to really just come in and celebrate your guys for achieving their dreams, right? Every football player, little league growing up, everyone's goal is to make it to the NFL. We all know that, you know, it's only a slight few that has that opportunity that get that chance to do so. So it's just, like you say, once again, there's no winners, there's no losers. It's just congratulating guys for the hard work that they're put in and, you know, them having that moment for themselves, that moment with their family that, you know, essentially they did it, right? They kind of was able to achieve that goal. But we know once you kind of get there, there's a lot more work to do. But, you know, you always, like you say, it's a good time for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, I think myself and everyone who listens to this show or watches it, Bryant, we know the Vikings needs, the Vikings strengths, you know, but we don't know Donovan Jackson very well. All we know, maybe if we watched Gophers football or we're Big Ten fans, maybe we caught a glimpse of him here and there. But now Donovan Jackson is on the Vikings roster. So we know the Vikings, you know Donovan much better than we do. Tell us about him. What kind of player do you, as a former offensive lineman yourself for the same school, maybe you've got a little soft spot in your heart or at least a keen eye for him. So tell me about Donovan Jackson. What do we got with him?
Yeah, so essentially I had the pleasure of watching Donovan Jackson play for 4 years at Ohio State, right? He kind of came in and he kind of got some time early. And then from there, once he got to that starting position at left guard, he held it down. And it's funny, you know, he's a first-round draft pick, and you get it. I get it, right? It's like this guy does everything well. Like there's no thing. It's like, well, okay, if Donovan has to do this, he may get in a little bit of trouble, right? He just doesn't have that part of his game, especially me. I play guard. With certain things I like. You call this play, I might have some, some struggle here. You don't get that with Donovan Jackson. Like, once again, he's a guy that could go out and do all things well. Obviously, it's a passing league now, so you need your guy to be able to kind of hold in and protect your quarterback. Obviously, it looks like you guys most likely be starting a young guy at the QB situation this year, right, with JJ. So you need some guys that's around that could protect them, right? And it starts there, right? And then, but also, you know, you guys can run the ball, right? And so Donovan has a ability to get guys moving off the line of scrimmage and one-on-one blocks. He's a smart player. And then obviously he has some versatility to his game as well, as we've seen this season, having to kind of step into that left tackle position for us and really help us out there. Well, if you don't know, I guess I could go into that.
I did know that. Yeah.
But he do that as well. And that just kind of goes to him being a leader, him taking on the task and just understanding the overall goal of the season, right? He wanted to be a champion. He had to make some changes to his game. He makes those changes. And the same, that's what you guys are getting with him in Minnesota, a guy that's just willing to do whatever it takes, wherever it's needed to, you know, get the job done. And once again, he checks all the boxes that you need as far as the interior offensive lineman.
Yeah. You did mention him sliding out to left tackle. That's when Josh Simmons was injured. So As someone who's, I would imagine at some point in your career, you had to play tackle, maybe in high school, if not in college, right? But then you sort of settled in and became a really solid guard. So what does that tell you about him being able at the D1 level mid-season? They kick him out to left tackle from guard. He starts 9 games there, and Ohio State has obviously an amazing season. What does that tell you about him? Is it his mental acuity? Is it his physical ability? What, some combination of that?
It's both. So my first year at Ohio State as a starter, I started at tackle, started at right tackle, and then the next season I went to guard and I played guard for my last 2 seasons. I had a whole off season to get ready for the transition. And at the time, I was playing both. But like I said, once I went to tackle and was trying to earn that spot, I was there. When I went to guard, trying to earn that spot, I was there, right? Yeah. He did it in like a week, right? Essentially, you lose you lose a first round offensive lineman at your left tackle position, right? We play a game against Nebraska. We try to put some backups in. We struggle, right? We don't have a great job. A great day up front as an offensive line. And then the guy that has stepped into that role, unfortunately, he got injured in that game. So it's like, okay, now we got to kick Donovan out the left tackle just because these are the vets. You want to play your best guys. He gives us opportunity to do so. We had some more older guys that were a little bit more tenured that could play inside. So we kicked him out to left tackle. And his first start at left tackle was against Penn State. Against another first round draft pick in Abdul Carter, right? And so it's like the mindset. Like I said, I played tackle, I played guard. Going from tackle to guard, certain things you could give up, but you kind of can make it make sense. But going from guard to tackle in a week, it's like I couldn't have done. Like, there's no way I would go out there and be able to get the job done. And to be frank, Abdul Carter, he did get I think 1 or 2 sacks in that game over Donovan Jackson. Understandable situation. The coaches kind of put him in a tough situation, right? But all in all, he stood up and he played really well against Penn State. We know Penn State, obviously they had Carter. They have other defensive ends that's most likely to be high draft picks on their roster. And he stood tall and he did it a day from there. And then the following week, now he got 2 weeks under his belt at tackle. Essentially, he's lights out from there.
Crazy.
So that kind of just goes to say, like, it's just not things that you could just up and do, right? But it takes a certain guy like in Donovan Jackson, his abilities, his mindset, once again, of just doing whatever the team needs to do to get the job done, going out, executing, and competing at an all-time high level, just to, once again, for one play at a time and just winning.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when a team does what Ohio State did, you get to the mountaintop and you're a 9-game starter at left tackle. I mean, you obviously were doing it right. You can't hide that long at left tackle, right? So so even if, let's say, he did have a bad rep or 2 against Abdul Carter at Penn State, obviously, like you said, from that point on, man, it was locked down. And that's a lot of what the story or the data you just gave us there is speaking to his ability primarily as a pass protector, which is going to be important. Like you said, JJ McCarthy, young quarterback, want to keep him comfortable and protected. I think though here in Minnesota, Bryant, there's been a huge emphasis on being more physical and being better in the trenches. And to me, that means, yes, pass protection, but also an emphasis on the run game. The Vikings traded for a San Francisco 49ers running back named Jordan Mason. They re-signed Aaron Jones. They signed Will Fries, Ryan Kelly in free agency. Now they have Donovan Jackson. So let's talk about him as sort of a mauler and a run blocker. I sense, Bryant, with some of the roster moves, I sense not necessarily a shift from a zone scheme to a gap scheme, but I definitely sense incorporating some gap scheme into it. Is he a good fit as a run blocker in a gap scheme, blocking downhill, double teaming, getting to the next level? Is that something that he's going to be able to do right away?
Yeah, I would say that's probably, to be frank, that's probably what he do best. Like when it comes to run fits, it's more of that gap scheme. Once again, if you, obviously I know him, right? If you just look at his build, he just built for it, right? He kind of has like a slimmer build when it comes to the lower body, but the upper bodies kind of have a lot of bulk to it. So when you get guys like that going, right, and then obviously you got to have that mental jolt, right, because you got a defensive lineman, usually a big defensive lineman that you kind of got to hit and try to get some movement there. But then you also got to have the quick and swift feet to kind of get to that next level. Because now you got, the athletes there at that second level, that linebacker who's usually looking at either shocking you and kind of running through you, right, trying to beat you with speed. And then if they see they can't do that, then essentially they kind of try to start bubbling over, once again, beating you with hands and try to beat you over top, where they kind of have the ability to do so, because they couldn't run through, right, because you kind of shut that off. So yeah, he fits that well. Once again, he's a smart player and he's been doing it for a while, right? I think, a lot of times you see some guys that go early in the draft, first round, and they start just talking about the talent. Oh, he has a lot of talent. He has all these abilities. Maybe, he hasn't done X, Y, Z. We haven't seen him do X, Y, Z, but, since he's so talented, he still can but this guy's been playing a lot of football, like I say, 4-year, essentially, not a 4-year starter, essentially, here at Ohio State, 4-year player for sure. So he just plays a lot of ball. So he knows how to, win in certain situations and the different techniques it's going to take to kind of make yourself successful before the ball even is snapped. So, that always kind of gives you a head start into the game. Obviously, you go into the NFL locker room, there'll be a ton of line, right? The playbook multiplies by 3, all those things. But you guys got a guy that, that could, that has shown the ability to adjust, shown the ability to kind of lock in and learn. And once again, he just has that experience of doing so. So I think he'll be able to kind of check that box with no problem.
Very cool. How about, have you been able to sort of glean anything or observe anything about sort of his attitude? Not like, I'm sure he's a great teammate and has a positive attitude. Not that. I mean, like his demeanor on the field. And that can vary from like really, really good players. They can be quiet and keep to themselves, but sometimes really, really good players are out there, out front, and they're not bashful, right? Where would you put Donovan on that sort of spectrum?
The way I see him, and obviously because now I was as a former offensive lineman, former captain at Ohio State, right? If you was on the field, I probably wasn't the most rah-rah guy. But in the locker room, in the meeting room, I had that relationship I could build per player, right? And know how to talk to them to kind of to get that best ability out of them that I feel that was needed. So from Donovan Jackson, I don't see him as the big rah-rah loud guy when I'm around, like in practice, he's not, yelling at people, things of that nature. But how he is in the locker room, he could be totally different, right? How he is in the huddle, right? When you're in the huddle, because I know myself, like sometimes you get in the huddle and you need like just a couple words. Hey, 3rd and short, we really got to get this one guy, and kind of get your guys going. That's stuff you just can't see, right? So I'm going to have to assume that it might be there. But, as far as a guy like, I don't know. I don't even know who to compare him to if you're talking about offensive line guys. But guys that just, yell, rah, rah, rah type of situation. I don't know. To me, it doesn't mean that much for me from offensive linemen, right? We're not getting sacks, getting up and doing our dance, right? We're keeping guys from getting sacks, and we get to the sideline and celebrate with our team once we score a touchdown, right? So, but he definitely has the ability to finish guys. I think, that's always a qualification you want to see all your offensive linemen be able to kind of just roll their hips and just get a guy going and just finish them, right? On their back. He definitely has the ability to do that. So that's something that's a part of his game. Once he lock on to guys, that's usually the end of the play for them. So, once he gets there, that's usually it. He usually could kind of, hold them, choke them out that we kind of says off the lineman, and then he could kind of definitely win from there. So.
Yeah, cool. Well, my last one for you, Bryant, is not necessarily a Donovan Jackson specific question, but he's part of a pretty significant makeover for the Vikings offensive line. They're going to keep both their tackles, Christian Darrisaw at left tackle and Brian O'Neill at right tackle, but all 3 interior guys are going to be new starters, presuming Donovan Jackson becomes a starter week 1 for the Vikings. They'll have a new center and a new right guard as well as a new left guard. So talk to me about from your point of view, when a team is undergoing that kind of a makeover. Obviously, there's excitement about that because there was probably a little bit of lack of performance that now you're expecting is going to improve. What are the challenges that group will have? 3 new interior guys. what are some things they're going to be working on in practice to make sure they're ready to go week 1?
Yeah, so it always starts with communication. Like I said, when I played, I didn't play in many games. I think I played in one game, one play, real game. But I was on 7 different teams over the course of 5 seasons, right? So I was a lot of different places and learned a lot of different things. You guys are gonna have the challenge with now. Obviously, I'm an Ohio State guy, so I don't love JJ McCarthy.
I know, I get it.
I could go on record for saying that, right? But be honest, though, I hear a lot of good things about him and what he brings to the table. But what I was going to say is, when you're looking at young quarterbacks in the NFL, a lot of times protection will come when you're a young guy. Usually, the protection is set by the offensive line. So that center, he goes out and he'll say, like, okay, he identifies the 4 guys that we're taking up front, and then the next level guy. Okay, I think these guys are coming. We want to go this way with the protection. They kind of make that decision. So the communication is always key as far as the center and where he thinks things are going. When you start to get to a little bit more of an older quarterback, a more seasoned quarterback, the quarterback would take on that responsibility the more he knows the game and kind of understands everything that's taking place on the field. He kind of can sit there. He can see it better because he's standing. And so he can make the decision, okay, which way the protection should go and things of that nature. So I feel like that's always a mix that they kind of have to figure out. Obviously, with 3 new guys up front, it always starts with the center. And then the quarterback kind of has the ability to kind of override things as he kind of gets more comfortable in doing so. So 3 new guys up front, just the communication. Hey, how are we talking? How are we identifying things? What are we seeing? Do we agree? Do you understand? Right? Because last thing you want to be is in your stands and the center is going in that direction and you feel it should be something else. That alone can kind of, make that a negative play for you guys. So that's always, I think, the biggest thing, especially when you start talking about that center and quarterback relation and just protection guys from there. But other than that, you have enough time to practice everything else. You have enough time to practice your run, fish, your double teams. How do you plan on assisting the guy when you're free? How do you plan on helping the guy when it's a double team? Things of that nature. I feel like you always have enough time to kind of get that, especially now, right? They go through some OTAs, mini camp, and then get to fall camp. So they have time to kind of work on that. But the communication is key because once it gets live, right, you make a mistake, we know what a mistake equals. It equals your quarterback getting hit or, some type of negative play from there. So I think that's always the key thing in considering when you're looking at a new guys up front. For sure.
Cool. Yep. Well said, man. Well, it's Ohio State, man. There's a lot of good players that you guys got, and you've got other guys to talk about that came out of this draft and went to various teams. So Bleav in Buckeyes, man, will be a fun place to be the next couple of weeks. I got to think, right? You guys must have a great show planned for tonight.
That's right. Yeah, we had, I think, with 14 guys drafted, that ties like a modern day record for Ohio State. Even the guys that didn't get drafted, they all went signed free agent deals. So you got this, basically every one of our class that you would thought would go onto the NFL is having that opportunity to do so. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about. So it'd be exciting. Definitely follow the show if you want to kind of hear our opinions on things. Who won, who failed, who got picked up maybe earlier than we thought. It'll be a good show the next couple of weeks. And the next thing, like you say, after this time, you start getting these little reports on how guys are doing, doing, right? And that's always fun to kind of hear as well, who's doing better than expected or not. So we always just bring that on our show, following our Buckeyes throughout the nation.
Yeah, man. It's fun, man. It's a lot of fun to do it. So make sure you catch Bleav in Vikings. If you're not following already, make sure you follow and subscribe to Bleav in Vikings and do it with Bleav in Buckeyes too. You can hear from Bryant every week then as he tells you about the Buckeyes that have gone to the NFL, but then also how are the Buckeyes going to defend what they captured last year? That'll be a fun thing to figure out. It's never rebuilding for Ohio State, Bryant. They're just reloading, man. They're just reloading, right? Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot for your time today, Bryant. Really appreciate it. We'll have you back on again. We can get maybe a progress report on our guy, Donovan Jackson, once we get him into some practices and stuff. All right. All right. Cool.
Well, I appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Talk soon. That's going to do it for today's episode of Bleav in Vikings, everyone. We thank you as always for listening. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to Bleav in Vikings and Bleav in Buckeyes. Once you do that, we'll see you there. Until next time, everyone, always remember, keep believing.